Hi, welcome. We're glad you're here. I wish I could see all of your faces, but apparently the laptop can only do, 6 things at once instead of 7. So I'm Marianne Ozmun-Wells. I'm the administrator for the Equity and Inclusion Office at the Washington State Department of Licensing. I'm here with 2 colleagues, and I'm going to skip those 2 introductions in this format just for the sake of logistics, and they will introduce themselves a little bit more in detail when they come on. But Lani Fowlkes is our PEAR Team coordinator for the Department of Licensing, and Kyeshia Likely is one of our PEAR Team members, community PEAR Team members. So we are all going to talk a little bit about I am accidentally advancing these things. We're going to talk a little bit about how we got to where we are with our PEAR team, and we're going to invite you to do some brainstorming of your own about outreach and engagement and how to retain a quality PEAR team. So I want to start by saying that that if you've ever heard the quote, culture eats strategy for breakfast, that's really where we are starting with our PEAR team. So the entire Equity and Inclusion Office for the Washington State Department of Licensing, the most tenured member of that team has been there 1.5 years. I've been there since February. Lonnie's been there since March, and our Civil Rights Compliance Coordinator has been there since May. So we're a very new team, and a big portion of the work to have the kind of PEAR team that we have right now, the foundation for that was set before we got here. So what we'll talk today about is agency culture, outreach and engagement, how we kind of put boundaries or scope around what our PEAR team's going to do. We'll talk a little bit about nurturing the growth of that team, harvesting what's the mutual benefit, and the opportunity to generate additional relationships from this thing that starts as an executive order. So sometimes you just have to till the soil. Sometimes there are big disruptions that result in organizational change, and that was the case in 2016 when the Department of Licensing, in addition to licensing drivers, vehicles, and vessels, we license many businesses, and we also are one of the largest warehouses of personal data in the state of Washington. And as a result of some federal requirements, there was the release of some data in 2016 that specifically put our immigrant neighbors at risk and caused harm. There's no other way to say it. It was the result of that Governor Jay Inslee established Executive Order 1601, which is about the protection of personal data, and the appointment of a privacy officer. And what that said is, we're only going to ask you what we need to know in order to provide you the goods and services you need. So we don't need to know your national origin, your racial identity, your ethnicity, to give you an ID card or a driver's license. So that was the first thing, where we no longer ask national origin, your citizenship status or residency status. We also updated privacy policies. And then in 2017, that went even further. We strengthened that. The commitment now in the Department of Licensing to really asking the minimum information we need in order to provide folks with what they need. The people in DOL are incredibly passionate about that, and protecting our neighbors in Washington State regardless of how they came to be in our state, that's a commitment that this department shows on a regular basis. So it was that disruption and the departure of the director at that time that allowed Governor Inslee to bring in another director who was a seasoned state employee. And she retired shortly before I started. And then we got super lucky, and Governor Inslee appointed Marcus Glasper as our director. The foundation that was set by Marcus's predecessor, my predecessors, and Lonnie's predecessors are key to this work and where we're at now. One of Marcus's quotes, "I've been in public service now for over 30 years. And one thing is clear, there's probably no other agency that touches so many lives in Washington state than this one. And this means that every day we have the opportunity to demonstrate what public service looks like in a way that positively impacts people's lives." If you look at our values and our strategic plan, at face value, you wouldn't necessarily think, well, that's a regulatory agency. They're the ones that, give and take away people's driver's licenses or any of that. When you look at what we say we do, we say that we are here, our purpose is helping every Washington resident live, work, drive, and thrive. And we hear from some people that the idea of being able to drive is a privilege that not everybody has. We recognize that. And we also recognize that a big part of our book of business is making sure that when people drive on our roads, whether personally or moving commerce, that they do so safely and competently. But if you look at our values, respect, diversity, equity, inclusion, and trust, those are all really human-centered values. There's nothing in those 5 values that speak to being this regulatory and compliance agency. And if you ever have an opportunity to spend some time with DOL policies, you begin to see that proactive equity and anti-racism is foundationally not just in our values, but in our policies and everything we do. So then you go and you see some of the strategic priorities here. And again, you're looking at it and you're seeing that our goals are to have engaged and prepared employees, and that DEI is embedded there, that equity and inclusion is a huge piece of our strategic plan. We are really committed to making sure that everybody has equitable access to our services, and that we work to eliminate barriers anywhere that we can see them. Then safe and supported communities, that's where we're talking about driver's education, the ability to drive, the ability to operate a vessel, or have a business. And then again, that commitment to keeping people's data safe and secure. So part of how we enrich the soil as a department is through building a culture that has policies, programs, and practices committed to DEI. And then growing a team of professionals who believe in and model the belief that authentic relationships are the most important element of any state equity, diversity, and inclusion program. So then, we talk about planting the seeds, and how our PEAR team began is like how a lot of people's PEAR teams began in state agencies, big and small. It started with internal staff, and our internal staff came together, a lot of people who were really passionate about this work, and they started saying, you should have these people at the table. Our original PEAR team coordinator started with who he knew, and he started building those relationships because every person who he knew somebody. Those connections formed naturally. One thing I will say about the DOL approach is that nothing has been forced. the people who are doing this work at DOL are natural relationship builders. It's part of how they are hardwired. And so what's been really lovely here is seeing how that natural way of being combined with this construct of building these relationships, that's really just been the beginning. And you'll hear more from Lani in a moment that that it isn't just about how our partners are partners to us, but it's about how we show up for them. And if you read any of the material in the PEAR Plan and Playbook, they'll talk about these relationships that are beyond transactional. And that's really something that we've gotten to enjoy in DOL. So the other thing that's been happening is that we're so invested in our community partners that they have become our best ambassadors for additional community partners. We now have the good fortune of having people asking us to be on our PEAR team, and that's pretty amazing. I wanted to add one other thing, and that is that it's not just the PEAR people who are doing this outreach. Our deputy director, Alejandro Sanchez, he from the very beginning was building these bridges as well. He was putting us in contact with people who represented the communities that we're serving. And he continues to do that. So it's not just the people whose job it is to do DEI, but it's modeled at every stage of our leadership. And with that, I'm going to kick it over to Lani. Oh, I know, right? Sorry, mic exchange. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Omar. Sorry, guys.
Were you able to print some of the other ones?
Good.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks
For this one? No, for any of them. No, for the other ones.
So, am I supposed
The
to?
last one I did. Yeah, so starting to go from like week.
Maybe somebody can mute themselves. Okay. Oh, this way. All right. Oh, nurturing growth. So I will talk to you today about nurturing growth with our community partners. And I have sorry about that. I'm going to talk to you today about community partners, and I have the pleasure of working with our community partners at DOL. And Kyeshia Likely is presenting later, and she's one of our community partners with South Sound YMCA. So when we're working with our community partners, it's important to continually care, give, and grow the trust and build the trust with them, and pay attention to our community partners, listen to what they have to say. And if they're missing a few meetings, to check in with them and see, what's going on, and how can we help you? Is there something we can better support you with, so that they could return to meetings and make it more of a beneficial time for them. Also, we want to align to their goals and priorities and challenges. So you just need to ask them, and they will tell you. And it's good to learn as much as you can of your community partners. So if you learn about challenges that your community partner has, I mean, there's a wonderful opportunity to connect by being a bridge to a resource, and just to help and give them a lift. So it's good to inquire about that. And so what should we do to earn trust? Follow up and follow through, and pay attention to comments they've maybe put in a chat, and maybe review some of those emails you've had, email exchanges that you've had, so you could, really dial into the conversation and let them know that you really care. And what does trust look like? So what do you think we would notice if your community partner is trusting you? Well, for me, I feel that they're gonna tell me more, they're gonna confide in me, in fact, invite me to, events, that they have. And then if they seek you for help, then you really feel that you're their partner. And that's where it's very, very rewarding. And always remember that your community partner is your partner outside, also outside of the 2-hour monthly meeting. That is your partner every day. So they're there for you. We need to be there for our community partners. So relationships beyond the executive order. So this is important to, be that partner outside of the meeting. So genuinely listen to connect and care about what they care about, learn about what they care about. And if we make a commitment, carry it through and follow up on their challenges. So if you learn of challenges, offer support. And I feel very lucky. I've been invited to a lot of community partner events. And for instance, Kyeshia invited me to a really fun evening event where she gathered her fellow leaders into a room and had dinner, and we exchanged ideas, shared struggles, shared successes. So it's nice to get invited to those events and to make even more connections. Also, We Are One America's also a community partner. So last week they had an event and I attended. And so it feels good to be invited to the table. Also, another community partner is Rainbow Center in downtown Tacoma, and they have an event on November 11th, which I plan on attending. So yeah, we're very grateful to be trusted and to be invited to events. So I received approval from a community partner to share this next story, and his Dr. Bernal Baca is the executive director of Mi Centro. And he's allowed me to share this event. So a couple months ago, Dr. Baca and Mrs. Baca suffered a very violent, life-changing, horrific home invasion, attack, robbery, just horrible. Many things were stolen. One of them was his ID. So the next day he goes to DOL and calls me, and it's an emergency. And so I'm thankful that he calls me. And then I called Marianne. Marianne, shifted into high speed and connected with those management team members who oversee that licensing office. And Dr. Baca received awesome service. He was very happy at the end. And so the point of that story is that Dr. Baca felt that DOL was his partner, and that is really felt so good. Another thing I do with the one-on-one, we call coffee talks, where I reach out to them individually. We set up 30 minutes and we just have a conversation. I have a conversation with each partner. And I document what they say about what they would like PEAR to be like, what would be beneficial to them, and then we work on that together. And I do that twice a year. Also, relationships beyond the executive order. So it's always a good reminder that we're their partner in addition to them being our PEAR partner. So I try to study up on, just on the websites, all the different pages. And on the website, you also can see if there are volunteer opportunities. So I volunteer whenever I can, and if there are even donation opportunities. At the South Sound YMCA, they have a few programs, and one of them that Kyeshia let me be part of is collecting shampoo and soap and toothbrushes, and they allow those experiencing homelessness to shower at that YMCA, which is awesome. So she collects donations for that program, which is just so nice to be part of that. And something fun, really fun, the DOL team, the Equity and Inclusion team, we do Duolingo. And so we invited some community partners to join in with Duolingo, which is, learning a different language, an app. And you can give each other boosts, give each other badges, all this stuff. And it's fun, and I need a lot of those. So, okay, let's see. Let's go to the next slide. Community compensation. So Bill 5793 states those who serve state agencies may receive compensation provided that the individuals are not otherwise compensated for their attendance at meetings. So at this time, unfortunately, all of our community partners, none of them can take advantage of this community compensation. So there are rules around community compensation. They're very specific. There is a caveat to only be able to financially compensate those who are not getting paid in other avenues. And so we pushed back on this caveat with the Office of Equity to stress that partners are taking time out of other things, out of their normal jobs, out of serving their communities to participate on the DOL PEAR team. So our partner agencies shared that this forces an ethical dilemma for them about whether to serve clients or serve the state agency. So some feedback that we got from partners were, one person said the argument would be nonprofits have a limited amount of money and time. Another person shared, time is very limited. I am beholden to my community, and having the compensation piece would allow justification of time spent. And another person said, time has a price. The compensation would allow me to be able to further serve my community. So they're making some very good cases there. Meaningful engagement. So what does meaningful engagement look like? So we should be asking our partners for their input, taking their input, applying it, and following up and communicating how their voice influenced the action. So 3 really great examples of how DOL has done this is our DOL Digital Communications and Outreach Director engaged the PEAR partners in reviewing and providing input on a decision package, the Real ID 2025 decision package. And this was around funding for Real ID public awareness campaign, including strategies to reach marginalized communities. Another example where we invited input of our partners, our policy and legislative analyst engaged our partners in reviewing and providing input on an ARL around the equity statement supporting the access to identity. And during our last PEAR meeting, Deputy Assistant Director of Customer Relations made a presentation to the PEAR team to invite their input on our dual language certification program. All right, so let's move on to our breakout session. All right, so we have Omar here. He's gonna break us out into 10 groups. And the question that we will discuss in each of the breakout sessions, and let's brainstorm, maybe enter it into the chat, some ideas you have around this question. What are some things that you can do better, that you can do to better engage your PEAR team? What are some things that you can do to better engage your PEAR team? So let's break out for 15 minutes and brainstorm. Thank you. Well, I hope so too. Check, check, check. All right. Are we back? Trickling in. I'm going to admit. Oh, there we go. It's hard to tell if everyone's back. Thank you, Omar. Okay, I think it's time. Oh, there's Fred. There's our fearless leader, Fred Wade. Thank you for being here. Hooray. All right, thank you everyone for participating in our breakout session 1. We're going to have a second breakout session, and the question will be, what are some things you can do to grow and sustain your PEAR relationships? So same kind of thing, we'll break out into the breakout rooms and put your thoughts in there in the chat around that question. What are some things you can do to grow and sustain your pair relationships? Thank you. Okay. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for participating in breakout session 2. So we will gather up your great thoughts that were put in the chat and save that and share. So our next thing we have up is Kyeshia Likely, Executive Director at the South Sound YMCA. And I will pass the mic to Kyeshia. Thanks, everyone.
Still trickling in. All right, are we ready? 5 more seconds, guys. All right, good morning or afternoon at this point. Hi, everybody. I'm Kyeshia Likely. I am the Executive Director of Community Engagement at the South Sound Y. And I just wanna tell you guys some information about our partnership and some highlights that I have being our representative on the PEAR team with Lonnie and Marianne. So I'm going to ground us in our commitment at the YMCA is to become an anti-racist multicultural organization. And we have done a plethora of things in community to build upon this commitment. So I'm going to start with a little video from our national association, and then we will continue.
At the Y, we're proudly for all. But what does for all mean if some of us are prevented from accessing the opportunities we need to thrive? Equal opportunity is no longer enough. To remain relevant to the people we serve and help our communities become stronger, safer, and more cohesive, we need to lead with equity. That means working to identify and remove the barriers that have historically prevented some of us from thriving, while ensuring that each individual can access the unique support they need to reach their full potential with dignity. The Y has been on a journey to change lives and transform communities for over 176 years. But despite our best intentions, our track record is far from perfect. At many points in our history, we too have contributed to the inequities that have held certain groups back. We too have been complicit in perpetuating systemic racism through our policies, practices, and procedures. We are determined to do better. As a core component of YUSA's 2020-2021 operating plan, our equity strategy is a long-term pathway to help bring to life our new For All commitment. Equity for all. Here are just a few key elements of the strategy. The wise way of advancing equity is our simple, adaptable framework for Y leaders and associations in partnership with their communities to drive equity through individual, organizational, and societal action. Our approach focuses on changing internal and external systems, not just addressing symptoms, to ensure we are creating lasting change. This year, the seemingly endless incidents of racist violence against Black individuals across our country has forced us to reckon with a painful truth. Systemic racism is alive and well in the United States. That realization compels us to help the Y become an anti-racist, multicultural organization. An organization that intentionally promotes inclusion in all aspects, ensures and sustains diverse representation in our leadership, and leads social change in our communities through anti-racist policies, words, and actions. In 120 countries, the Y is empowering young leaders who are addressing some of the world's most pressing challenges, including tackling climate change, advocating for mental health access, creating safe spaces for LGBTQ communities, and addressing youth unemployment. Our global social equity work will focus on providing wide change makers at home and abroad with resources, leadership opportunities, and world service support to help them advance equity on a global scale. Each of us in the WISE network has a critical role to play in advancing equity for all. Join the DIG community on Link to learn more and partner with us on this journey.
So thank you all for watching that. So again, the Y is committed to making sure our doors are open to all and we're servicing everyone from an equal lens, an equity lens, supporting all individuals on reaching the same goals or same accessibility access to our services and any other community services by being a supportive community partner that refers out consistently and gains communications for our community members.
At the Y,
And so how do we do this? We do this by setting a tone within our organization of raising the bar. And the bar stands for belonging, achievement, and relationship. And you can kind of say it's our motto or framework on how we start programs, build new whys, or any of our policies and procedures. And I would like to give you an overview of who the South Sound Y is and where are we operating. And you'll see me go back and forth with some slides because of the order, but an overview of our association is that we service in Thurston County, Lewis County, and Mason County. We have sites in Thurston County and Mason counties. We have 30 childcare sites, 3 facilities that we like to say are 2.5 because one of our facilities do not operate a swim department or aquatics department. We have a youth sports department, aquatics, teen and families. Your typical engagement is within our branches as being a member or being a guest, but we also have programs outside of that, like our childcare sites, as well as like our shower program, etc., that we are doing in community to further our commitment of making sure we're uplifting multicultural leaders or any marginalized community that needs to be supported within our space or just have a wide experience and a greeting face. And so to set our tone in our culture, of course, we have adapted our mission for our association, not the national mission. However, our mission for our region is to provide youth and community members with accessible and affordable areas to support mind, body, and soul through recreational health and leadership programs. And so how we do this, again, we are flipping through some slides, but we'll come back to some, is through, again, raising the bar. And some of these events or bridging events in partnership that we have are listed here right on your screen with some beautiful pictures from some of those things. One in particular that I would love to highlight is our big tents, which Lani mentioned earlier. Our big tents are usually quarterly, and they are specifically affinity spaces. Sometimes we have big tents or community bridging dinners, or, well, we eat a lot, so I would say mostly dinners. So we'll have them for community members to come and just break bread with each other, find common goals, common strengths, just to connect and become actual community members that know one another. We have these quarterly, some are stewarded for multicultural leaders in the community, as in our area is very rural. And sometimes that means that you might be the only one on your staff team and you want some support for other people who host the same ideologies or representation as yourself. We also do things like Welcoming Week to support a multicultural connection. Another event where we invite community members not only into the wide doors, but we also partner with the city of Olympia to do broad community things in the park to support the diverse communities and bring awareness to all that are currently homing in the community that we serve. This is a lot of meal breaking, a lot of gameplay, and a lot of youth engagement. We also have things just within our capacity of professionalism, our DEI professionals network space, where we invite multiple DEI professionals across the county to join us for a meeting where we talk about our own personal career strengths. A lot of time when you're in a position and you're doing diversity, equity, inclusion work, and adding that B of belonging on there, you're kind of your first the first person to explore that at your organization, especially smaller nonprofits where you don't have a big team. And so it's nice to have a place where you can contribute your thoughts, but also your interactions that might not make you feel so well. And so we do host that at our facilities with other community partner things like foot care clinics for people experiencing homelessness or just choosing to live outside. Sometimes their feet are not always kept up and there's wounds and sores that need to be treated. So we've partnered with the St. Martin's nursing program to host once a month foot clinics for all individuals that may want to sign up. Some of those individuals also come from a program that Lani highlighted, which is our shower program. And that program is for any individuals that does not have access to a shower, but particularly we see our community members that are experiencing homelessness or choosing a nomad life that utilize that program. Also, lastly, I would like to highlight DOL in our PEAR Team partnership. Our PEAR Team partnership is something that I'm so proud of. I have been in this position for a little bit over a year now, and being a part of this partnership, at first, I didn't even know what to expect. I didn't know what I was coming to learn, because when I think of DOL, I think of the automatic of driver's license, not thinking that DOL, again, like Marianne and Lani have said, touches everybody at some point in their life when we're talking about marriage, when we're talking about our first experience as a young person getting an identification card. And with that, I would like to share a story before I share the impact. So when I was 17, I got my first identification card. I was going because I was in junior ROTC and I didn't know what I was doing. So my mother went with me and I went up there. And of course, it's my time after waiting in the Federal Way long lines. I don't think y'all can do nothing about that, but maybe one day. But I was at the Federal Way facility and I was getting my identification card and I didn't know the various questions that were asked. And the question that scared me and shocked everybody was the donor's question. Do you want to be an organ donor? I did not know what that meant. I thought there was a sheet, that was hanging, and I thought they wanted to do clinical surgery on me at this point in the process sorry, we laugh every time. So I thought they wanted to do surgery on me and was asking my mother and I for permission to do so at that moment. And so I'm like flabbergasted, I'm shocked, I'm overwhelmed. And I'm like, no, I don't want to be here no more. We're leaving. This is over. And the lady was so sweet. She was just like, oh no, she's not. My mom's like, Kyeshia, stop all this foolishness. Like, you better get your stuff. And I was like, and the lady was like, no, she's fine. That's a real question. I guess these sheets can be scary, you know? And when I think of that and think about our representation on the PEAR team, I think about how this PEAR team is allowing us the simple engagement tool to be able to have access to officials at DOL to talk about some of the concerns we hear from our everyday members or just community members who have questions. If everybody on this call did not know, the YMCA requires identification as soon as you enter the facility as a guest or a retaining member. And that's every year. You have to come back with your new ID and you have to showcase because we run you through Raptor for any, crimes or anything that we feel like will potentially harm the other young people or members in the space. And that is a barrier for a lot of people. And it's a barrier that stops a lot of people from even wanting to walk in the YMCA doors, I must say, to even use the bathroom. So having this partnership is also being accessible, like you see in our mission, and attaining the framework of belonging, like we said we would like to, raising that bar of equity. And so when I think of this PEAR team, I think of that. I also think of leadership development. And I have talked to a couple of people in our last session around leadership development. We have 16-year-olds all the time. We have 13, we have all type of age groups. And these young people are assessing our facilities on a daily and not having places where they're aware that could be provided their identification cards. Some of them are not stewards of their parents and they are homeless or, adapting to life at an early age and growing up fast. And they don't know how to get these basic identification cards. And so thinking about things that we learn in our peer partner team, like DOL to go and the language services that are accessible. We have a branch in Shelton. Particularly Shelton has a really big population of people that identify as Guatemalan. They speak an ancient dialect within the Spanish spectrum called Mum. We don't know many people that speak that dialect. So there's always a barrier of cultural acceptance, proximity, and engagement. And what way to be as the Y, a connecting safe space, is to offer this language service that helps them require the basic things to identify now they are in this country and they want to be a part of their everyday going mission without being stopped and asked about their identity, and feel safe to do so in the doors of a Washington State department without facing any legal reparations about their status. And so we at the Y, at the South Sound Y, love being a part of this team. We love Lani. Lani has showed us so much grace and connection by coming to our events. She has showed up for donations. She has showed up for collaboration. And we love that because we are people's people. And so, yes, that's what I wanted to share about this amazing opportunity that we have been provided. And I hope it highlights just the strength and connection that we're all looking for, especially as post-pandemic. And thank you so much for having me.
Okay, awesome. So this PEAR thing, it was required by an executive order, and we had some specific guidelines around who we should partner with, how we should partner with our PEAR team, internal and external partners. And what we found as a state agency is that these relationships have taken on a life of their own outside of the structure of PEAR team kind of requirements. Lani talked to you about being involved in a lot of these organizations after hours, on weekends. And we wanted to share, it's not going forward. We wanted to share with you all, at the last session, somebody asked me, you have external partners outside of your state agency? And I said, yeah. In fact, at any given time, a third to close to a half of our PEAR team is outside agency partners. And this is one of 2 pages. There's the other half of our agency partners. We specifically reach out to organizations that support historically and currently marginalized groups, We, as an agency that provides identification and licenses, we work very closely with a number of nonprofits that serve the immigrant, refugee, and asylee communities. And every time we get to interact with our PEAR Team partners, it ends up being just an incredibly enriching experience for all of us. So we want to give you all a little bit of time to ask us any questions that you might have about, how to get your PEAR Team growing, how to keep it thriving. So I just want to, can you open mics for folks? Maybe. Oh, okay. So you all can unmute yourself. If anyone has questions for me, Lani, or Kyeshia, we welcome them now. Crickets. Is this thing on? Tap, 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 tap.
Hello. Hello. I'm in the state of Colorado, and I just kind of stumbled across this. But how did you get PEAR started? How did you you've got a whole bunch of partners there. Did you go reach out to them? Did they reach out to you?
Yeah, so in recent years, our governor and our legislature formed the Office of Equity. That office developed what's called the PEAR Plan and Playbook, the Pro-Equity Anti-Racism Plan and Playbook. It has an accompanying policy, it has guidelines, it has teaching tools for the agencies that are required to have PEAR teams, which is pretty much most of the agencies in Washington state. So we had this mandate that said we needed to do this thing. As far as how we went about building the PEAR team that we have here in Department of Licensing, it really did start with somebody who knew somebody. And that may have been our assistant director, Alejandro Sanchez, or Lonnie's predecessor, Dan Hollis, who they knew somebody, and that person knew somebody else. And it sort of was a little bit of a cascading effect. Our original internal PEAR team partners, the staff, including at least one who's in our session right now, he was another one who brought to us this idea of who should be at the table. So the thing that's sort of magic about the DOL PEAR team, and I don't even like to say that because it implies that there was something magical that happened here, something special that other agencies can't do. The thing that happened here is that these relationships, many of which were formed before the PEAR team, but that they have taken on this really authentic and meaningful life beyond that PEAR construct. So there was a mandate that we had to do a thing. We worked on doing the thing, and then because of the people involved, it just morphed into something that's been really amazing. Like Lani mentioned, one of our PEAR team partners who survived this really horrific event. And, I don't know how many people out there in the world, when they're in a crisis, their first thought is, I know, call the people who are in charge of the DMV. I mean, I just don't think there's that many people who would think that in that moment of crisis. But he knew that he could get to Lani, and Lani would do whatever she could to support him. So, yeah. So it starts with your, it starts with your state culture and what your state is willing to invest in terms of policy and requirements. Other questions?
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I sure wish I could see folks. Oh, I'm supposed to give a shout out to Kevin. Hi, Kevin. Oh, Kevin. Oh, gosh. Okay, you're getting major shout outs from in the room here for signing all the stuff. Yeah, for being the ASL rock star that you are.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
All right.
This is Michelle again. Do you do consultations, quote unquote?
Yeah, we certainly can. Absolutely. Absolutely. And our information is in the program. And we welcome people to reach out. In fact, Lonnie and I here recently, there are some state agencies here within Washington who are trying to get their fledgling PEAR teams going. And we've had an opportunity to connect with some other state agencies on some of the things that we developed. And it's been a little bit more challenging in this virtual environment to share some of our tools, but one of the things that Lonnie does that was created by her predecessor is called Coffee Talks. And it's really one-on-one meetings with our prospective and current PEAR team members, and where she's just getting to know them. And is there, oh, we have questions. Okay. I see Omid.
Hi, yeah, you could finish your thought if you'd like.
Okay, so what I was going to say
interrupt.
is that we consult internally, and we're more than happy to consult externally, and also share some of the tools and resources that we've developed here at DOL. Sorry, distraction. Squirrel, yeah. Okay, so Omid.
Thank you. I have two questions actually. One, and pardon me if any of this you've spoken to already. I had to jump in and out for various reasons. I see on the screen here you have the organizations, the community partners. Was there an intentional decision to think of your PEAR partners, community partners, in terms of like the organizations to partner with rather than the individuals and the communities or organizations that individual is connected with? And pros and cons. My first question is if you could just speak to maybe if there was some how y'all approach that.
So I think it's both and. I think in some cases, for instance, our assistant director had some connections with the immigrant community. And so it started with a person and then came to the organization. And in some cases, people told us, oh gosh, you really have to connect with Skagit Valley Navigators. They're really helping the folks who are limited English proficiency or need help in other languages. So it was both. And I mean, I think one of the things that Lonnie does exceptionally well is cultivate those one-on-one relationships. Kyeshia is one of 3 people from the YMCA that are on our PEAR team. So at any meeting, if one of them can't be there, there is somebody from the YMCA at our PEAR team meeting every month. So it's both. Yeah.
That makes sense. One quick follow-up. In terms of structure, just emblematic of this slide, y'all are listing the organizations. Did I hear earlier one trade-off was folks are there representing the organization, so then community compensation they would not be eligible for because they're not there as a community member, they're there as an extension of their organization. Do I have that right?
That is absolutely correct. So if we had somebody, for instance, if there were a 16-year-old who was, getting their license and had lived experience with our particular organization and could share their lived experience or lived expertise, they might qualify for community compensation by virtue of they're there because of their identity, their lived experience, their income level as it is and not being otherwise compensated. As of right now, we don't have any community members that meet that pretty limited criteria. And I want to catch this. There's a question in here for Kyeshia specifically. How does an agency become a partner with the YMCA? We already took them, sorry. No. I'm kidding, I'm kidding. Yeah. 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 Kyeshia's going to answer that. Yeah.
Hello.
There.
Hi guys. You speak to me. I can put my email in the chat.
Okay. Hey, no,
so I'm with the South Sound. I'm with the South Sound. Hold on, I'll spell it out.
Okay.
LIKELYK. Yes, at SSYMCA.net.
Oh, net.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And so just to answer your question a little furthermore, if you want to connect with any association, because again, you guys, particularly my YMCA services Thurston, Lewis, and Mason County. If you wanted to do like Tacoma, Piersap County, or Wenatchee, who has representations on the PEAR team, you would just reach out to their community engagement director. Sometimes that person could be a director, a coordinator, various levels at different associations, but you would just reach out to them with your idea or just a connection. I take a lot of lunch dates, I'm always down for a food. So yes, anytime.
Thank you, Kyeshia.
And I am, I'm putting my my work email address in the chat as well. I'm going to try and do Lani's. I'm doing Lani's, I think. Trying to talk and do, yeah, no, this is not a good thing. I got it in there, I think. So you can reach out to any of us. If you do reach out to me, if I've mistaken any of the characters in Lani's email, I will absolutely connect you with her. And I, if whether you were with us this morning at an in-person session or in one of our virtual sessions, one of the key things is that our leadership model this work all the time, and they are constantly participating in engagement with the community and giving us the freedom to go and be out in communities. So we couldn't do what we do if it weren't for the leadership that we have. And we are at time. I thank you all. I hope the breakout sessions generated some good dialogue. We're going to be doing one more virtual session today if you've missed any of it. And then we'll have one more in-person session today as well. So thank you all for being here. Appreciate you.